Hola, gracias. Se me olvidó casi todo de mi español, entonces es muy difícil para mí. I will have to do it in English. Perdón. I used to live in Costa Rica a long time ago, so this is why I learned Spanish, but I forgot it was more than 35 years ago, so apologies. I will try not to speak too fast. First, for the translator, for those who need translation. If I go too fast, you actually raise your hand. So first, maybe, yes, my name, I think that's the important bit here. Papadimitriou. It is obviously Swiss. Yeah, I was born and raised in Switzerland. My father was Greek, and my mother was from Finland, so purely European. The joke is that as a Greek, I dodged my taxes. As a Swiss, I put all the money that I dodged in a bank. And as a Finn, obviously, because Santa Claus lives in Finland, I'm financing Christmas. So basically, you can thank me for the upcoming Christmas. So yeah, the other joke is that I have multiple passports. They're all hidden in a safe in Zurich. And my name is Jason Bourne. No, obviously, it's not. I don't even have the air as Jason Bourne. So just call me Paul. I think it's easier. Papadimitriou, but just call me Paul. That's always what I say to flight attendants in every flight I take because they have such a hard time pronouncing my last name. So, this is what you see in many presentations on television every time we talk about the future. You see, I don't know, a robot that walks into a corridor and I don't know why there's lights on the side. This is what the future should be looking like, right? This is actually what we're getting. This is in Bangkok airport. The robot is also smiling. I'm not exactly sure what the robot is doing here. We probably have seen that in some airports in Spain as well. So you see the difference between what we are promised and what we are getting. The reality, however, is that this is also in Asia. The robot is not moving and the person is very, very angry at it, as you can see. And my job is basically to understand why is that? Why we have companies that promise the future and then we end up with disasters like that. This is what actually I do as a job. I ask always 3 questions. Who are we? Our sense of identity here in Valencia. Why are you Valencianos? The sense of companies. Why are we coming? Why are we doing what we do? This is the who are we, the first question. The second question is obviously where do we want to go? We want to go to the future, obviously. But what is the future? I don't know. This is the second question. And obviously, the most important one is the last one, is how do we get there? So always with these 3 questions, you can apply them for business, you can apply them for your companies, but you also can apply them, obviously, for your own life. So what I do, I deal with myth and tools. Myth are the stories we tell ourselves, the stories of your companies, of your brands, but also the stories that we all share as people, as families. And tools, obviously, is the technology, what we invent as human beings to achieve this myth, those stories that we tell ourselves. This is the kind of job I do. And today, what I want to talk to you especially because, I just have the board here. I have the convertible model on my head. But I don't know the future, obviously. No one can tell you the future. However, I want you to think about how to think about the future. How to believe the future, how to comprehend the future that is coming. This is a little bit what we're going to do in the next 30 minutes today. This is the only bragging slide, just to establish credibility. These are some of the clients I work with, so that you know that I not only talk on stage, but I actually work as well. So, first thing, it seems evident, but what you have to do, what we have to do when we think about the future is obviously to look ahead, to look at the road ahead. I don't know, you probably all drive, and there are many studies showing that when we drive, a lot of people actually, we tend not to look very far ahead, we tend to look just in front of the car. And this is the biggest mistake that we do when we think about the future, because we tend to only think about tomorrow, or after tomorrow, even in the next 10 minutes. I hope you're going to stay with me in the next 10 minutes, actually. So the first thing we have to do is to look at the road ahead, because if you don't pay attention to these details today, you're going to miss the future and you're going to miss tomorrow. This is always very important. The robots are already here. Not the ones we were promised. It's not a Terminator who came for the future, but they are already here. I showed you earlier the robot at the airports. This is not what we expected. The kind of things that happen this is a fulfillment center. This is a company, a French company actually, that I've met 2 weeks ago in New York. They are doing fulfillment centers. Every time you order something online, whether it's on Amazon or any other type of online delivery, you already have these type of robots that are actually fulfilling and creating the parcels for you. This is happening all around the world, obviously. And this is something that if you don't pay attention, you don't realize that it's here. Because obviously we tend to think about consumers and what we're actually getting. And we say, well, the robots are not here around us. But they are actually already there. Artificial intelligence is already somewhat here. I don't like to say that it's fully here, but we've been hearing for the past, this year actually, we've been hearing a lot about, obviously, ChatGPT. Well, it's already here, but if we were not paying attention to the details, this is not the way we thought artificial intelligence would come. Again, if I'd asked you 2 years ago, what do you think, how do you think artificial intelligence would come? Most of you might be, including myself actually, we would have thought about something very different from simply a chat that we would discuss with a computer. This is, again, because if you don't pay attention to details, the future arrives without you knowing it, and then you're actually lost. So you have to always be careful that the assumptions we make about the future might be wrong. And a lot of the assumptions, obviously, come from movies, which are very fun to watch and can be informative, but in no movie you would have seen a ChatGPT before they arrived. The second thing that we have to do, and again, I'm going to continue using the analogy of someone driving, even though I don't have a car in London. The second thing is you can only draw trends backwards. A lot of people will try to do trends forwards, which I try even myself, but as I just told you, if you do that, you actually might be mistaken. Again, most people would have not thought that AI would come in the form of a chatbot. So, and by the way, this sentence, only draw trends backwards, is a famous quote by Steve Jobs, who used that very often. He said, you can only draw trends backwards. So you have to draw lessons from the past. You know, when you drive, you seem sometimes that you are on a road that is actually completely flat. But if you look at the rearview mirror, this is how you realize actually the road is actually going slightly up or slightly down. This is exactly what we need to do, because if you don't have a sense of history, then you cannot actually think about the future either. One example, of course, is nowadays, this year and last year actually have been pretty tough. We have high inflation all over the world in the various countries. In the past month, I was in New York, I was in Qatar, I was in Pakistan, I was in France, and now I'm here. In every single country, every single client I talk to, they all have this biggest headache, which is inflation. Another one, of course, we have conflicts. We've been having conflicts for the past 3 years. It's very sad. And obviously, we have as well an energy crisis that is a bit better now, but it's still lasting. However, if you think only about today, that creates anxiety. But if you think about the past, these three things already happened in the 70s. They're not the same. It doesn't mean that we cannot complain. We have the right to complain and be unhappy about what's happening. But forgetting the past means that we don't draw lessons from it. So are we in the 70s or are we in 2023? Another example here. If you had thought about how shopping would actually come up, no one would have actually told you that shopping would come on something like TikTok. I remember the first time I saw the Chinese version of TikTok. I was sat in a metro in Shanghai, and I was seeing this woman next to me and doing exactly that, like you've seen maybe your kids, maybe you use TikTok, this speed at which they were switching between streams. It was like probably more than 10 years ago, and I couldn't get it. I'm old at the end of the day, and I was like, this is going too fast. But even when seeing that, I wasn't able to think that it would actually become one of the major e-commerce players. Again, if you think about only the trends backwards, and if you forget to pay attention to details, then you don't realize that actually new technologies can enable new ways for us to transact, to love, to communicate, because we are really informed by our past and not about the possibilities of the future. Many other examples I could take, and I don't want to bore you with them because there's so many that we can take, but obviously health tech. I have this on my wrist. Many of you have some type of smartwatch. I have here another thing here to monitor constantly my blood pressure. A lot of these devices are coming online and are helping us actually to better understand our health. This is one thing. We have, of course, a lot of we keep seeing these, masks that we have to put to see in augmented reality or extended reality or virtual reality. Again, stuff that people think about gaming when they see them. Actually, I work with many companies, especially in the travel industry, so airlines, for instance, but also train operators. They actually already are using these technologies to enable them to train their staff better, because suddenly, instead of having to have a full plane in front of you, you can actually simply use stuff like that. Again, the reason that we might not know about this is because we are consumers and we see things as consumers. What are we actually doing every day with our technology around us? Whereas actually a lot of the technologies is being used by industries already. Again, if you don't pay attention, you might not see it. And the major thing here is that all these technologies seem to be going faster and faster and faster all the time. Faster commerce, faster entertainment, faster learning, faster healthcare, etc., etc., etc. We know this, but we don't realize how fast it's become. For instance, if you buy the latest Samsung or the latest iPhone, compared to last year, you say, well, the camera is a little better. There's not much difference. But if you compare that phone with one you had 10 years ago, maybe you still have it in a drawer somewhere, then you realize how incredibly fast our technology is advancing. And the same, by the way, will happen with stuff like ChatGPT again. If you wait for the next version, which will come somewhat in the next few months, and compare it to today's, you might not realize how fast it goes. You can only see how fast it goes when multiple iterations later. This is what happens when you look in the past. So everything goes faster and faster, faster. And the key here is that disruption is speed. Disruption is speed. That's a key thing that you have to remember. Then to continue on the driving lessons, when you drive, you have to also look everywhere around you, not only in the front, not only far ahead, and only in the rear view mirror. A lot of companies that I work with, obviously, and that I don't work with, a lot of companies always think about their competition in a very narrow sense. Because, of course, if you work in, minerals, and you do commodities, then you think that your competition is another company who does minerals. You don't have the sense that maybe everything is competition. And I think, and I strongly believe that is actually the case. Everything is already competing with everything else. First, we are on an everywhere planet. When I got out of university, I'm 48, full disclosure. When I got out of university, the people, that was when? 1998. Yeah, I'm old. The people that I was competing with going out of university with maybe 500 million people on Earth. And that's even putting it a lot of exaggeration because maybe not 500 million people did university. Nowadays, if you had the same age, or maybe one of your kids goes out of university, the actual number of talent he or she will have to compete with is 7 to 8 billion people. So obviously that changes the game a lot. And this is something that we tend to forget when we live in very local lives. I'm not saying that you don't travel, I'm not saying that I don't travel, but more often than not, we see as humans what is exactly around us. But the world has changed whether we like it or not. We have a huge number of competition, and this is why ideas and talent is now everywhere. This is the everywhere planet. More importantly, out of all these people, in the past 15 years, more than 2 billion have become basically wealthy. Not rich, but have enabled them to actually make choices, buy stuff, including technology. Half of them, and that's very important, half of them have been women. So certainly, obviously, the decisions that are made by companies of what people would like to buy are made more and more by women. Not only, of course, in our more older countries, in the older continent that we live here in Europe, but everywhere, which means you have to have a shift of mindset. And by the way, and I'm talking to the gentleman in the room here, more than 80% of purchasing decisions in households are actually made by women. Even if you think, man, that, I'm taking the decisions, that's actually her taking the decision in the back, but she makes you believe that you are taking the decision. So this is very, very important, because all around the world, more and more women are actually coming on the job market and becoming wealthy. And by the way, the countries that perform the best in terms of emerging nations are countries where more women are coming into the workforce. And the last one is here for global trends is the fact that more and more people live in urban spaces, in cities. Mega cities, not so mega cities, but live in cities. We were reminded how that works during the pandemic, because obviously during this sad and bizarre time of the pandemic, we saw that if you were in a city, the chance of you getting the flu or getting here COVID virus was faster because there were more people around you. The same happens with IDs. The same happens with business. This is why you live in a city, because you want to have faster access so that you create this, what we call superlinearity. So this curve like this. You sadly, again, remember the curve we were seeing at COVID. The same applies to technology. The same applies to IDs. So more and more people in cities. However, is that the future then? I started with that. Will we have that in Valencia in 20 years, some kind of robot that walks in a corridor? Honestly, I don't think. That could be also the future. This is a movie from Terry Gilliam. When you have ads following this guy pretty much everywhere, you can see there's ads absolutely everywhere. And when I show this, people think I'm joking. People think this will never happen. We will not let that many ads. This is Emirates Airlines. Okay, this is first class. This is just the beginning. These are not real windows. These are 4K cameras that actually show you what is outside. I work with airlines a lot. Airlines would love to have that because then, for one reason especially, it makes less fuel consumption of the plane if you don't have windows outside, because there's no friction. So it makes more sense. It will be more sustainable, which was what the previous people were talking at the end of the panel. You need more sustainability. However, really? Do you think that if I have that in Ryanair, they will show me what's outside and not show me an ad every 30 seconds, or that I will have to pay premium to get access to the view? This is not actually a joke. It could actually happen. The thing is, with technology and with things in general, we get used to stuff very, very quickly. Again, I'm going to use a sad example of COVID. At the very beginning, we were all looking at each other, what's going on? And we were maybe afraid or anxious. At least we were afraid that we didn't know what was happening. Very quickly, we got used to stuff. We got used to the pandemic. We got used to maybe working from home, from not meeting as many people. We might not have been happy about it, but we got used to it. The same with your phone. You get used to it. It doesn't become such an extraordinary device after a while. The reason is because when we get something, we don't get excited after a certain extent, which is why, this famous graph of saying, there were boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, supposedly they're very different from each other. And by the way, the person we came up with Gen X doesn't help us, because I don't know what's going to come after Gen Z. We're already running out of letters. The reason people think, but the youth do things very differently. Well, actually, if you think about it, did you not want to travel when you were young yourself? Yeah, the youth, they love to travel. We wanted to travel as well when we were young. We might not have exactly the same access to technology, but we did exactly the same. The behaviors do not change. So this is actually pretty wrong as an idea. It doesn't mean that you don't have to think in generation, but don't overthink that. The thing is that we normalize everything. This is the biggest human behavior driver you can think of. We normalize everything. We normalize everything that is around us. This is why, for instance, when you try a new service, something completely new, the first time you're like, wow, this is very, very good. And then 3 months later, you think it's normal. And if it doesn't become better, you become bored. Because every time we want better, we want better, we want better. Your customers expect more and more. Once you give them something innovative, 3 to 6 months later, you think, but now it's normal. What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? So that's something we do. And this is not only, it's actually derived from a survival instinct. I've actually met people that lived through wars, and thank God, and hopefully we won't have one in Europe. But at the beginning, it's like COVID. At the beginning, you're like, wow, what's going on? And then you basically normalize it, and you continue living. This is why normalization is so strong and so powerful. This is our resilience. We get used to stuff. The good stuff, the bad stuff, but we get used to it. But that's very important when you think about your consumers. Very important to think about even simply your employees, because we get used to everything really, really fast. I call that the oven effect. Again, for the gentlemen in the room, I hope you know what an oven is. It's an appliance where you put food in it, and you turn a button and it becomes basically cooked, it becomes hot, right? How many times do you go in front of your oven in your kitchen, like, wow, this is such a great piece of technology, look at my oven. We don't do that. We might have done that 60 years ago, the first time you had an oven. I remember, for instance, when my parents bought in the 80s the first microwave oven. Oh, wow, it comes from the United States. It's a microwave oven in my kitchen. Now I don't care about the microwave oven. That's normalization for you. The same happens maybe the first time you had your phone, a smartphone. You were like, so this is magic, I can do all these things. And now you're like, oh, whatever. I mean, I have it every day with me, it's boring me. That's normalization. This is the biggest driver of human behavior, and that's what I do. I study human behavior, that you have to think of when you think, again, your consumers, your clients, your partners, when you think about your employees as well. Is this oven effect. We have new normals all the time, and we get used to them. That competition I told you, right now you're deciding, or maybe you're forced, I don't know. Right now you're deciding to be here in this room with me, with your colleagues and friends here at this wonderful anniversary for Forbes Spain. But you have a choice, and we have more and more choice. Our kids even actually more choice than that. You can choose your activities many, many more times. Here I put something. You could decide between watching television, working for a charity, having a coffee, the type of work you do, going to walk the dog. You can decide all this. So when I said everything is in competition, it's not only about the attention of your consumer, the attention of the employees, for instance, is the fact that we have an explosion of choice to what we do. So to come back to what I said at the beginning of this little chapter, I said everything is in competition. So if you are working in pharma, your competition is not only other pharma companies, it's every single human activity that goes into competition. And the same when you have to think, and that's very key, about your consumers, about the people you're trying to approach. You have not only to give them the choice of what they have to do, but you have to realize that at the decision, for instance, when they're reading Forbes, they can have a multitude of other activities that they might decide to want to do. And because there's so much choice, everything becomes competition. And it's actually normalized. And we normalize this. This is, I'm sure you know now, by now, this is ChatGPT, right? It's become normalized. The first time I used it, and I hope you used it once, it was like baffling. I was, wow, can you actually do that? I'll tell you a secret. I was organizing this big conference from I'm not going to say the name of the company because they're not going to be happy, and I was doing the job that Anna is doing. I was helping moderate, and I had to create questions last minute for a new speaker, and I didn't have the time. I went on ChatGPT, had 10 questions out of the 10, 5 of the best ones I have ever written. So obviously, this is already there. And we're getting used to that more and more. The people that go to university getting used to that more and more. We normalize it already. We've normalized, maybe not you yet, but we normalized this type of technology already. So why, as this gentleman, very angry, destroying the checking, not normalize it? Why do we still get frustrated sometimes at stuff in front of us? Because I said we can normalize everything. Why are we sometimes, and even me, I never destroyed a checking counter like this, but why don't we not normalize? First, we were told that the future would be better than that. It's very frustrating for us human beings when everything works and then suddenly we're promised something would work and it doesn't. And very importantly, when you replace humans by robots, you remove empathy. If I have to go to take the example, if I have to go in a checking counter, it happened to me actually in Zurich last week, and there was a problem with the flight, and I couldn't get a seat, etc., etc., etc. Because the person in front of me was a human being, I was like, oh, it's not their fault. You know, we negotiated it down, we found a solution. If I had a robot, if I had a machine in front of me, I don't know what I would have done, because it's very frustrating. For instance, already, because of the emergence of AI, you have call centers that instead of using humans, in the Philippines or in Morocco, etc., they're using synthesized voices. You can still recognize it's not a human, because when you talk, sometimes you're like, is it actually listening to me? So what happens? You become anxious and angry, and this is why, and you remove that empathy, because they're not another human on the other side. So you become even angrier. Actually, I'll tell you a trick, because I work with some of these massive call centers. If you want to get fast-tracked in a call center, with the little music, you're very important to us. The next available customer service representative will be in about 35 minutes. If you want to get fast-tracked, and I'm not kidding, it doesn't always work, insult the phone. I'm not kidding, because they have algorithms that recognize when someone is angry and put them in front of the queue. So usually when I call these things, I start saying very, very bad words that I won't repeat on stage for your sake, and usually you get fast-tracked. Anyway, we were told that it would be better than humans. And that's the last and most important lessons. Remember that we are humans. We have to understand that we are humans. We are slow. No matter the speed of technology, no matter the speed of everything around us, no matter that everything gets faster and faster and faster, we are actually relatively slow. And we want to be actually slow. We have always the same desires. We want to belong. We want to be safe. We want to take care of people around us. We want comfort. We want a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose. And we want love. And that has never changed. No matter if you talk to your parents, your kids, if your kid is 5 years old, 15, 25, we all want the same thing. We might express them differently, because we, again, use whatever is around us. The default for one of your kids might be slightly different than the default from you, which was very different maybe from the default from your parents. But we all want the same things. We just express them slightly differently. And I know, again, that currently it's very hard not to have anxiety, not to misunderstand the world, because, climate change, conflicts, loneliness, mental health issues. Oh, the AI is going to take over, we're not going to have any jobs anymore. So obviously it's harder to have this ability to look ahead. Actually, it's another human behavior. If you've ever been in a state of panic, actual panic, maybe just before, let's put a very easy example. You're driving and suddenly you have to emergency brake because something happens in front of you. Your vision goes like this, because this is what humans do. We're born in an ability to actually focus very quickly on one thing if we have to do something as an emergency. Well, I told you at the beginning, look ahead. But when we have all this happening, our sense of vision tends to restrict, because oh my God, I'm going to pay the bill, so I'm anxious about climate change. So obviously it's very hard, and I get that. It's very hard to suddenly say, I can see 30 years in the future when you have a problem that might happen tomorrow in times of crisis like today. So AI taking over. Also, it's harder to look around and to say, everything is great. If we're being told all the time that basically all our jobs, especially your kids' job, will be replaced by robots and some artificial intelligence. It's not fun to be hearing about that. I don't know what the future holds, but AI will actually be augmenting us a lot. And this is just a parenthesis, because it's always a question I get. This is why I preempted by adding this slide. Yes, of course, it will disrupt our jobs. But for instance, I can take one example in healthcare. Radiologists, both my parents died of cancer, so I know what a radiologist is. The first time my father had 3. The first time he got an X-ray, he saw, because he was a doctor, he saw something. He said, maybe there's something there. And the other doctors were telling him, no, there's nothing. He insisted, and they found his first cancer, and he was able to beat it because it was very early. All the people he was talking to were radiologists. Now, if we have some form of AI that is able to analyze billions of past X-rays and say, in all these cases, there was always maybe a potential of having a cancer, that will actually help the work of the radiologist, because it becomes less about he or her expertise, but about every radiologist on Earth expertise. So AI will actually be helpful. Will that destroy some jobs from radiologists? Yes, maybe. Lawyers or consultants, the first thing, I don't know if you work in a consultancy firm or as a lawyer, and you enter a law firm, what do you do for the first years of your career? You do research for the partner. Basically, you read books and you read research and you write. Well, if we have AI, it's true that these jobs might actually disappear. The one thing that is still saving the jobs is not the fact that we are humans, it's the fact that we're cheap. And if you start when your first 2 years of work, you're actually pretty cheap. I don't know if AI is going to destroy all the jobs. What I know is that every 10 years we say that about everything, and every 10 years we have new jobs. My first startup, when I created my first startup in 1995, you know why I did this? Not only because I discovered the internet, but because I wanted a job that my parents did not understand. Right? And I was very happy because every time, the only thing my father could tell me is like, do you have enough money, Paul? He could not understand the job I was doing. So there are always new jobs. We might not know them yet. I certainly don't know them yet, but there might be new jobs coming. But to finish, and that's the most important, the things I've seen all over the world by traveling, and I know it feels like I'm bragging because I'm traveling, but what I've seen more and more is tales of empowerment. This is Jakarta, of maybe Manila, this is Manila. I've seen people getting wealthier and happier, getting jobs that didn't exist from economies that were in disarray all the time. It is really this idea of empowerment that I keep seeing all over the world. This is Karachi in Pakistan, actually. Actually, hope. Hope is a very human thing. Hope is, for some people, is unrealistic. For some other people, it's a dream. For some people, it's something they want to have every day. But hope is nothing that technology can replace. Hope is something that we have to actually create, right? Hope is based in our narratives, in the myth I told you at the very start. The reason we have hope is because we want to believe there is hope. And we discuss it amongst ourselves, whether it's at the dinner table with your family, or with your boyfriend or partner, whatever, or with your kids, or with your colleagues, or with the people you do hobbies with, you play tennis with. You talk about hope. We need to believe. We need to find things into believing. This is how we go forward as human beings, because if we were only to think about the things that don't work, and that AI will take out our jobs, and then everything will be destroyed, well, we might as well stop living right now. We need to believe. And so, the only thing we can do is that we know that life is chaos. No matter what we want to believe, life is always chaos. All the things that I told you, all the crises we've been living through for the past year and a half, 2 years, we were not expecting it 3 or 4 years ago. COVID, when it happens, nobody expected it 5 years ago. I mean, yeah, some people said, yeah, there will be another pandemic. Well, of course, it's easy to say. I can say that now. I can say on stage, there will be another pandemic, and maybe in 200 years I will be proven right. But we don't know. We have to embrace somewhat discomfort. The fact that things will not turn out the way they are. And that applies to your personal life as in your business life. Shit happens, in other words, right? So we have to deal with it. We have to find some kind of discipline into chaos. Keep doing the things we do well, no matter what. I'm going to tell you an example. Why I use the term discipline is not because I believe in the army or something, because when I use discipline, people always think that it's like I go to the gym every day. Do I want to go to the gym every day? No, I don't want to go to the gym every day. And that's the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation is like, yes, I should be going because I want to look good and I want to be healthy because I don't want to look 50 when I'm going to reach 50. The reality is discipline, is you create habits to go every day no matter what, even if you don't want to. Life is about that, especially when life is chaos. That applies to innovation in your workplace. That applies to how you treat your employees. It's not motivation. You have to have a discipline of having a mindset of the future in your company, training your employees in a ways that they will believe, again, in the hope of the future. It's a discipline, not a motivation. We have to embrace vulnerability. I said we are very resilient as human beings. We actually normalize stuff, the good stuff and the bad stuff. But you know what? It's easier to do that when we have people that believe in you. And the reason that we love our fathers and mothers, the reason that we love our kids is because we are vulnerable in front of them. We need to apply a little bit of that same mentality in the workplace as well, in society as well. It's okay to say that I'm wrong. It's okay to say that I, pardon my French, fucked up. It's okay to do this because people, again, we are humans. We're not robots. We're not that robot I showed you at the beginning. We have to embrace vulnerability. We have to embrace the fact that, yes, we fail, even maybe often, and that's okay, because that's the only way we can move forward. And we have to embrace generosity. And that's maybe the most important and the one I'll finish with, because it's one thing, maybe some of you have a good life, it's one thing to have one, it's another to want to give it to someone else. That applies, of course, to your family, but applies again to maybe people that work with you. It's easy to be in a bubble, again, because there's a time of crisis, to think about yourselves only. But the way that we're going to go forward, and the way, again, I've seen countries rising, I've seen companies rising, and of course I've seen people rising, is because they had this sense of generosity. They were giving out to others, giving out to the ones who were close to them. So you have to become a hero. Hero, in Greek mythology, comes from a Greek mythology that's called Leandros. Hero is a she, first of all, guys. It's not Iron Man, or it's not like some Superman. She's a woman. And she's a woman that shows the light and shows the path forward. And that's what you have to do. You have to become a hero. We are in a world of chaos, a world of discomfort, so be a hero. This is, for instance, one of the stuff I did. Yeah, I'm bragging about myself here. We took 35 young kids. We brought them to Hong Kong. Then we put them in a plane from Hong Kong to London, and then at London Airport. And for 36 hours, they were hacking and trying new ways to create apps and create IDs for the airline industry. We took them, paid everything, just have fun, because we're trying to actually bring them something to believe in. And actually, some of the solutions they came up with were actually used by the airline industry. Be a hero for her. I said many times, I think, during my speech, which is about to end, and I'm on time, and thank God, because usually I'm always late. Be a hero for her. Because, and I know I'm placing her, because societies that, it's not only because it's the right thing to do, which it is, but societies and companies and people that actually help women are the ones that actually end up winning. It's actually proven, whether it's societies, whether it's companies, we need to embrace women. It's easy to go on stage and say, yeah, we need gender parity, yeah, we do the equality, blah, blah, blah. We've been doing that, you know what? I was going out of university, there were already the same speeches. 30 years later, some stuff hasn't changed. We need to continue doing this, and you need to do it not only because it's a good thing to do, but because you need to be a hero for them, because that's how you will enhance your chances of winning. I'm talking here about, of course, your companies, but also all of our countries. I'm no hero myself, trust me, I wish, but I'm not. But the one thing I can tell you is how it feels to create startups. I've created quite a few. This is Macau. This is the highest tower you can jump legally from. This is bungee jumping. And this is how it feels like sometimes to create companies. This is how it feels like to try to understand the future and to push into unknown territories. You jump and you figure it out. Of course, I have a cord, and I didn't die at the end, but this is exactly how it feels like, how it should feel like if you do any type of innovation, any type of transformation within your company. So on that, please be the Spanish heroes that the future needs, because we need you, and I need you, and on that, I'm Paul Papadimitriou, and I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Should I stay on stage? I think I should stay on stage.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very interesting speech. We have some questions for you.
Thank you, Anna.
Qué interesante lo que nos contaba Paul, de la normalización también, de ese futuro, de la innovación, porque es verdad que muchas veces nos puede dar vértigo, nos puede impresionar, y él pues, nos ha ayudado a humanizar, ¿no? También esos miedos que podemos tener de cara al futuro, y lo ha hecho además de una manera muy didáctica y muy efusiva, que nos ha gustado mucho. Gracias, Paul.
Gracias.
A ver si tenemos algunas preguntitas, si me pueden acercar las preguntas para poder resolver esas dudas. Bueno, fenomenal. Vemos que hay inquietudes. Fenomenal. Vamos con la primera pregunta, que es de José Manuel Figueroa, de BNP Paribas. Te voy a preguntar, how far are we from having robots occupying main force and earning a wage and we... La letra... Okay, and will stamp movie kind of reality?
Oh, Elysium.
How will this affect the crowd? Do you understand?
Yeah, of course. So the question is basically about whether or not at some point there will be so many robots helping us that we will end up in a state where we have to maybe fight them, or actually will be in so much disagreement. Look, it's really hard to know that. I think the person mentions the movie Elysium. I don't know if you've seen the movie Elysium. The point of the movie is less about the robots, but more about inequality and the fact that there are people that are earning a lot and are hidden in their own bubble with the help of a lot of robots, and the rest of humanity has nothing and actually tries to survive. Which, by the way, when you think about it, is sometimes already what happens. I've lived in emerging countries myself, and I was exactly living in that bubble. I was in a very nice area with very high towers, and I had all the stuff I wanted, and at the same time, I was looking from my window, and just a kilometer away, there were slums. This is already happening today. Whether or not we will have robots, yes, probably. The thing is, we're making less and less babies. And you can see example, for instance, in Japan. I used to live in Japan myself. So you have a choice. You have a choice between immigration and robots. Japan has chosen the path of robots, saying, for the elderly care, we're going to use robots in care homes to help you, instead of having maybe people coming from the Philippines. I use that country because I've also lived in the Philippines. Now, having said that, does that mean that at some point there will be more robots and humans who will be unhappy and will fight them? I don't know. What I know for sure is that for now, what we thought, if you look 10 years ago, we thought that robots will replace all our jobs, right? That was the big fear. Robots will take our jobs. And we thought that the jobs that it will be taking were the jobs of the people in factories. And actually what's happening is the opposite. The bigger risk, because of AI, is the jobs of people in offices that might be taken first, because it's actually easier to displace them than, we realize, to create robots that do human tasks with their hands. And as long as robots, actual robots, or physical robots, are expensive, they're not going to replace people in factories. Even companies have tried, I've shown you one of the thing, even the companies do fulfillment, they still need to have human hands at the end. It's too expensive and too complicated yet to have robots. So no, I don't think the people will be at risk. The ones that might be actually at risk are more white-collar jobs, office workers, but that also is not something that will take another 30 years, I think. I want to stop talking because I know there's another question, otherwise Ana will scold me.
Muchísimas gracias a José Manuel por plantear esta pregunta. Yo creo que es una duda que nos hacemos mucho, ¿no? ¿En qué momento pues llegará un robot a estar aquí preguntándote y un robot contestándome? Bueno, para eso, tal y como nos ha explicado, pues aún queda. Vamos con otra pregunta más que tenemos. En este caso es de Carlos de la Cruz, de Avalnet. Él pregunta, as technology evolves, many people doesn't know how to keep up. How do we approach digital divide, especially of the elderly?
Yes, I think it's very important. The last bit, the elderly, is very important. I always remember I left my country where I was born, Switzerland. Again, I'm immigrant parents, but I was born there. And I was telling my father this, and I offered him a computer. I said, this is how you're going to communicate with me when I'm in Japan, right? And that's when I realized the first thing he did, and it was a normal computer, he put his hand on the screen and he tries to press the button. And I'm like, no. That was way before the iPad, way before the iPhone. And I'm like, oh my God. And through his older age, I realized how complicated technology was. I thought having, again, for instance, an iPhone is pretty easy. I got used to it. And I could see the difficulties my father was having trying to understand something that for me was easy. So the question is very, very important. Two things. One, because of the advance of AI, I think technology will become easier because you will have a more and more humane interaction with it. So far, we had to use a keyboard, which is not very natural, a mouse, which is not natural, a stylus, our hands, which is becoming slightly more natural, but at the end of the day, I think voice will be one of the things that will help even the elderly to make it something that is more approachable for them. And the why we were going to do it for the elderly as well is because, it's what I said earlier, we are making less and less babies, we are living far longer, and simply is a market. For so long, the reason that a lot of companies work with the youth is because we know that when me or Anna, we chose something, I don't know, the type of designer we love, the type of technology we love, we make these decisions between the age of about 12 to 18. And generally, you don't tend to change. If you like something at 12, probably you're going to like it for the rest of your life, which is why companies battle so much for the youth, because they want to make them buy their brand forever, basically. However, because we're getting older, the market of gray people is becoming far bigger, and it's starting to become very interesting simply as a market, even removing the empathy about having someone like my dad around and not understanding the technology. It's simply becoming a market. So I think this will be solved. For that, I'm very hopeful that it will become easier for people like us, like me in 30 years, whenever, to use technology. Not because I got used to it, but because technology will be easier.
Pues ahí queda esa respuesta. Muchísimas gracias a José Manuel y a Carlos por las preguntas, a Paul por sus respuestas y por esta magnífica presentación que nos ha hecho.
Gracias, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Paul. It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Gracias.